Alrighty, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, you guys can hear me because I am recording this while other people are in the house, so I can't be eccentric with this review and the other one. But this one's one of my, I don't know how to really rank this. I say not really guilty pleasure, but well, it is pretty funny too at certain points. But uh, I think this one was a little bit more of one of Tarantino's other quieter films because I didn't see him much in the press say anything much about this movie. More of critics have talked about this. Again, I could be wrong, but even on the bonus set on here, and I think even on a Blu-ray, doesn't have that much stuff in it. This movie's *Inglorious Bastards* is pretty much an alternative story or history take on World War II and then in the Nazi, regime or whatever. Because spoiler alert, Hitler dies in this movie that technically wasn't historically accurate, but this is a movie. It's kind of like with comic books, how they do a turn of history, and at the same time they do change at least a major. Well, I rarely see them do a change in major historical events. I would say like Justice League had did it with one of the in their animated series, but in the comic book I'm not so sure because in reality Hitler did die. Of course, he didn't live in old age. He had committed suicide. But in the scene that you just saw with him smiling, that was him in the theater in the third act, and how the soldiers came in and they just shot everybody up and set everybody on fire in the theater, and they shot up Hitler's face like multiple times. Another thing, I should have looked up a little bit more facts about the movie. I think this is based off of something else, but yeah, pretty much like Django Unchained, how it was based on. It was originally another movie, and then it was Tarantino took the Western in the name and had put a slave narrative to it. But going back to this, um, it's pretty much an alternative, take on World War II. You know, it, it's not really a propagandic film. It was pretty much showing how it is a little bit of a revenge tale, and it is two narratives in the story that do kind of interplay. The only difference is that the characters don't necessarily meet each other. In the beginning of the movie, the opening act is Shoshana, who's a Jew, hiding in I think in the German's house. That scene right there. I think he was either German or French, and of course we all know the history of how some of the Germans and the French were hiding, who were living in that part of Germany, were hiding Jews who were trying to escape or going to escape. And they, of course, Diary of Anne Frank, how, they were hiding in the thing and they eventually got caught and sent to a concentration camp where they were just straight up killed. Um, the funny thing, what I will say about this movie, because it goes a little bit with a reason with Django Unchained, how it was not a little bit of an alternative take on history, but not really satirical. It was just a story in that narrative. It's kind of funny, and I'm going to get in a little bit more behind the scenes stuff here, but and again, it goes back to Spike Lee's criticism because he was the only black person I could think of that had something, a big major issue with Django Unchained. But when this movie came out, I didn't hear that many Jews say anything about it, because the most triumphant moment, of course, when Hitler had got shot up multiple times, and of course, no one will bat an eye on that. And then, of course, in Django Unchained, even Jamie Foxx has said, it's him shooting up a lot of white folks, and even some of those conservative white people had got mad he had said that, but that's what he did in the movie. But going back to this movie stars what was it? Brad Pitt, who does a very good job at a Southern accent. This is like the second, I think the second movie I like him in. Of course, Fight Club is the first one, and I think there's another one. Seven wasn't that bad, but I know it's another movie that he did that's not really critically, even known or got much attention. But this is one of my favorite roles with him in it. Of course, if it's a Tarantino movie, most 9 times out of 10, he's gonna make you look good, even if you're the bad guy. He's in it. Eli Roth is in it. He plays uh, Lieutenant Donnie, or I could be wrong, but his nickname is Jew Bear. He beats soldiers to death with a baseball club. It's Christoph Waltz. Waltz is in this movie. I think this is his first American movie and the first movie I seen him in. He, I've seen him in 4 movies so far, and his performance blows me away every single time. He takes what he does very, very seriously. Michael Fassbender's in this. Uh, Michael Myers has a Michael Myers. Mike Myers has a brief appearance in this. I feel like I'm leaving somebody out, but pretty much those are the main hitting stars roles in this movie. Oh, and if you guys seen Kill Bill, the one that played the French interpreter, she's in this too. She's a very small role though. She was one of the Nazi commander general's wives, and I guess it was bridge more of those actors coming over into this movie. Um, I don't know who's the French chick that plays the Jewish character Shoshana, but of course those are the two characters who really, her and the lieutenant or Colonel Aldo Rain. Again, I could be wrong with the names, but they don't meet each other, but they do interact with the same set of characters. And it sucks because someone's telling me she would have lived, if she would have known about their plan, because even though dude had got caught and right there at the end of the movie, she still had her own plan and, couldn't have gotten out alive, all this, that, and the other. The good thing, a lot of the historical accuracies were correct, of course, with the other female character that's in there who was the British spy. They were known to be, moles within the Nazi regime. They were good at blending in since they all kind of look alike. They could be British playing a German, and it could fool them depending on it. But in one particular scene, which kind of gave it away, I think Cinefix had talked about it. It was a certain way that Michael Fassbender said the letter or number 3, letter, but the number 3, and it gave away him not, having a phony set of German, and even it was stated in the movie. But of course, it was built up in that scene. Another good tension moment scene was in the beginning of the movie when Christoph Waltz is talking to the Frenchman about. It was pretty much like what Hitler did, back in the day. How he was good at persuading people with the propaganda, saying why you should do this and kill Jews and this, that, and the other. But I'm not going to get into the whole political banner because a lot more historians and people have said it. Pretty much, long story short, why are you going to kill a bunch of people for problems that you pretty much caused? So that's pretty much my whole thing on it. Another funny thing about the movie, the lieutenant, I think he did it multiple times within the film. He branded some of the Nazi soldiers with a swastika on their head, saying that, you can cover up who you are after the war, so we're going to give you something that you can't take off. And that was just a brilliant, scene. I bet you there were a few, they did do a similar branding like that with some of the women, but they shaved their head. I think if they slept with some of the Nazi soldiers or something like that. But, I have a lot of stuff running in my head, so I really couldn't remember off the top of my head. Really pretty much in closing this was the first movie I seen Michael Fassbender and Christoph Waltz in it. I didn't know who Michael Fassbender was. At first I thought X-Men First Class was the first movie I seen him in, but it was really this. And getting a closer look on it. And, since I'm going to review those too and some other films he did, he does a good job in this too. Christoph Waltz, this is the first movie I seen him in, and from this role in Django Unchained and Big Eyes and what was the other one, Spectre, he caught my eye every single time. I really hope he comes back for the James Bond movie because the classic villain he played in that, it suited him well, even though I don't think he had that many scenes in it. Like IMDb had even said, even though he's like a main villain and he's casted by a big actor, he only had a certain amount of screen time. But he does a good job with all 4 of those movies I just mentioned. In every single one of those movies, it was a different character. Even in Big Eyes, he was a known plagiarist, but again, he did a good job at fooling people. That was based on a true story as well. I think my most favorite is 2 favorite roles I have Christoph Waltz in. They're like my top 2. even all of his performances, like I said, in the movies are amazing. The top two I really liked was in Django Unchained and Spectre. And number three will be Inglorious Bastards, and the last one would be Big Eyes. But I'm glad that Tarantino put him on the spot. I think this was his first American movie, or I could say, it's not his first big major American movie. Same thing with Michael Fassbender. I'm assuming it was his first big one, and then when he did X-Men, it launched him a little bit higher. Hopefully, he'll be in a James Bond film because it was talk about that too. And again, I'm gonna talk more about his acting and other in the X-Men films, of course, when we get to them. That's pretty much all I have to say. Again, we could talk about this movie in the comment box. There's many interpretations. Oh, I know the last thing I was gonna say. It really went back to what I was saying about the whole alternative history. So this movie does take place in the Tarantino universe. I think with the last one, Jackie Brown, it didn't as much as I like to connect the pieces, but because I think Tarantino counts it, of course, with how he markets his films. I think the new one that's coming out, it put at the front the ninth film of Tarantino. Then the one before that was The Hateful Eight, which was supposed to stand out like that was his eighth film. But with this one, someone had broke down his whole universe, and they were saying that since Hitler had died, the huge evil and vengeance that he would have caused or done or something like that, it didn't exist. So the major hardcore violence that we do see in like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and Django Unchained, and even though that shouldn't really had much effect, but even Kill Bill, it since it changed the history, think about it, in our real world, Hitler's at the most top number one as an individual, one of the most evil people in our human history of what he did. And anything that's a heinous and evil act in a human form, but not even going to the devil yet, is usually Adolf Hitler. It's so bad of what he did in Germany. Today the whole swastika is literally banned, and it sucks because a lot of people, they see that symbol, and what they don't know is that original symbol was a symbol for peace. If you go to parts of Asia, they had that symbol everywhere. And it sucks because some people might trip, especially some Americans who don't know that, and they see that, and then they want to flip out, and then they don't know that, no, first, the East Asian monks had this symbol. Don't know how the Nazis got to it, and they had fucked up the whole image of the swastika. So pretty much that's how the whole thing changed. The excessive violence that you see in Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, even Kill Bill, even though it's an in-universe movie, and Django Unchained, it goes, well, no, I keep saying Django Unchained, but 1940s and 1800s, but pretty much Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and I think the new movie that takes place in like Hollywood 1970s, it's all in the same cesspool of the excessive violence. So, keyword, Hitler never existed, violence everywhere. So, again, we can talk about in the comment box if you want to debate me on it or have a discussion. Again, hopefully you guys can hear me, and I will go to the next review. See ya then.